So look, what have been some of the most interesting aspects of your role in the last 3 or 4 years?
I think fundamentally it's the fact that dealing with a lot of high-profile clients, high-profile players, that is something which you learn on the job. Again, ability to communicate the insights to them. That is something which is not something which can be taught. You deal with a lot of numbers, you deal with a lot of insights, but to pick out the right insight for the coach, for the player, and something which they can understand and actually use it in the game is something which I've learned, and I think that is very important for everybody because each person has their own knowledge, and each person has their own way to actually interpret data, but actually making sense to what that team wants, understanding the requirements, and giving solutions is what I've learned. So, for example, if you say we found at one point in time Chris Gayle was very weak against a short ball. And that too for bowlers bowling about 140 clicks, he found it very hard. Now, there are people who just use that as an insight and communicate it to the respective teams saying that you do that. But there was a team which didn't have a bowler who bowls at 140. So if you have just a guy like Bhuvaneshwar Kumar who bowls at 130 coming in and bowling a short ball, maybe he will get hit. So these are small ways by which I've learned on the job, that you need to customize your insights based on the team you have. And yes, the data might tell you a story, but it doesn't mean that it will directly go work out. So if you don't communicate that to them, you're giving a wrong plan effectively.
Right, nice. And what do you think are a couple of the main growth areas in the next few years of cricket?
I think fielding is very underrated, and there's not much of metrics to actually measure fielding. It's hard. It's not easy as well. We also tried doing a lot of things, but the problem is most of the data is collected off TV, and they hardly show the entire field at every single point in time, and we don't know what happens to the fielders who are not following the ball. So ideally, unless ICC has an official data collector, introduces cameras to like how the NBA does, I don't think we are reaching that level. But I would like to see fielding being given more importance and a lot of data being collected. The other focus area, another growth area, is the education to the players and people involved in cricket about the value of analytics. Today, yes, it's mainly run by the coach and the analyst, and the coach communicates it to the player. But I think data plays a big role at various levels across formats. So Test cricket, it can be used to improve technique. Test cricket, it can be used to in strategies as well, but more for player development. Whereas T20 and ODIs, I think data plays a big role in strategies and tactics and helping teams actually make a decision. So, but we still have a lot of players who don't prefer data, who are slightly old school. So I think it's just a matter of time before everybody gets educated and everybody gets on board and becomes something very normal.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And look, the IPL, it's taken Indian and also world cricket by storm over the last decade or so. How has data and analytics in the IPL and other T20 competitions evolved over that time?
I think it's huge. I think it plays a big role, and the IPL is even kind of, I'm very grateful to that because that's kind of given my job and my profession. The fact that a lot of people don't know that T20 cricket has so much tactics, and IPL is a pioneer with respect to this. There's so much of what do I say, data being used, and it varies across a lot of teams. So I think it's very team dependent, captain dependent, coach dependent, and it depends on the setup you have. A team like CSK may not need that kind of data analytics because you have a captain who's as good as the numbers, who's able to read the game better than anybody else. A team like Mumbai Indians uses data a lot. A guy like Rohit Sharma is very keen on insights, data, and they do meticulous planning, and it helps them perform and do well. So you had two very successful teams at two ends of the spectrum. So that's what I tell most people, that it's not like if you use data you're going to win. It might give you an edge, it might not. But maybe if CSK change their captain, they might need some use of data as well. So I think a combination of both cricketing instincts and the insights we give matters a lot. So IPL has grown in tremendous areas, especially in terms of data. I think a couple of years back, RCB went completely in a data route. They hired coaches and support staff who are totally into data and tried to follow as much of strategies using data, and it didn't work out for them for some reason. So I think the captain, coach, and ability to make those decisions using data, knowing when to make and where to make, matters a lot, and that's where the captains come into the picture. So I would say maybe in the IPL everybody uses it, but the degree of usage varies, and the teams which use them, I've seen them being more consistent.
Right. And what about globally? You mentioned you've worked with the Windies when they won their T20 World Championship earlier. What about the global scale? Because obviously it's much talked about that money in terms of the cricketing governing bodies in different countries is quite unequal. Who are some of the countries that I guess are using a lot of data and analytics, and who might be looking at that in the future and aren't currently doing so?
Data analytics also, if you can actually segmentize it, you have your video, you have your data, and you have your wearable technologies, you have your body area networks where you start measuring a lot of things using sensors on the field, on the body, and then do analytics on that and make decisions. So slowly people have started using wearables as well. Australia are usually far ahead than most other countries in terms of using as much of their resources as possible. Australia and England, I would say, are slightly ahead. South Africa not too far behind, and India right up there in terms of leveraging all technologies. India still needs to understand the value, but they're getting there. Whereas the teams like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and even the West Indies for that matter, they haven't invested a lot in this space. Right. But it's not like they don't use it. Nowadays, having an analyst has become kind of mandatory. But the extent of usage and the kind of infrastructure they have to put up at the grassroots level up to the national team is missing. And I think that way only Australia and England are far superior. So every single county match in England is now available to the selector. England selector Ed Smith is a big fan of data. And the way they select teams, the way they use data to actually make those decisions are pretty interesting to note. So I think all teams need to get there. My wish is that every team needs to have this information. Whether they use it or not is secondary. But right now, there's no structure for that. Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are way behind the other teams. So today, even for selection, imagine if I have all the data about everybody's workload, how fit people are. And I'm just not talking about the elite cricketers. I'm talking about the 150, 200, 300 odd cricketers who are trying to get into that national team, right? So if everybody has access to these facilities and everybody has access to the information, the decision makers, I think we're improving a lot. And it has to come from top down. It has to come from the board. Every board should allocate some budget and invest the right people. Automatically, the industry will grow. It will give more employment opportunities, and you will find a completely new industry and new ecosystem.